Hi, everybody. For everybody that's watching live, sorry for those technical difficulties. This is the Google Resume Insights and Specifics How to Show Project Work. We are Alex and Oren. We're going to just introduce ourselves and then get to it. If you are watching live, make sure to sign in at the Go link on this slide.
Cool. So, I'm Oren. I'm a software engineer here at Google. I'm on the platform's test development team, which means that I'm make sure all the hardware at Google is good. And I graduated from Wesleyan and Columbia University and had a very difficult time simultaneously attending both graduation ceremonies. And one thing I love about Google is that my entire team dances when we go on an offsite. So we all get down on the dance floor and boogie with it. So that's a lot of fun.
Great. My name is Alex. I also work at Google. I am a software engineer in tools and infrastructure. I attended Wesleyan University, graduated in 2016, and I work for Google Fiber on the platform testing team.
Yeah, we do similar stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. So you may be wondering, why is your resume important? And don't worry, you've come to the right place. The resume is important. Slide, because it's how we interact with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, your resume is your first interaction with Google. We don't know anything about you before we look at that little piece of paper. So what you need to make sure that you include is a little bit about yourself and why you think that you would be a great fit for the company. So you want to highlight your skills, and you want to explain what roles you think you'd be a good fit for.
Yeah. So, so the first primary, most important thing is we need to be able to get in contact with you, right? So,
Next slide.
Sorry. Next slide. Right. So we're going to go over resume tips. Sorry, we're playing with the slides a little here. So we're going to go over first resume tips and things that Google thinks about resumes. And then we're going to basically go over a mock resume. Maria Chavez, you will meet her later.
And then we'll take some questions at the end.
Right, and then we'll take some questions and hopefully, make some things clear. Cool, so let's get on this.
Yeah, all right. So just some general tips to start out. The person that's reviewing your resume is going to need to be able to find all of the information about you right away, because you got to believe that whoever it is that's looking at your resume specifically has a whole stack of them that they have to go through.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you stand out immediately.
Right. And the first way to do that is to make sure that we can actually open your resume.
True.
So I just cannot stress that enough, because this happens, and it's very sad, where candidate is great, they email their resume, everybody's pretty excited about it, and the recruiter can't open the resume. And that's sort of the end of the line right there. So make sure that that's not you. We take PDFs, HTMLs, Microsoft Word, or general text formats. If you've got something crazy, if you have a LaTeX, resume, that's great, but turn that into a PDF first, send it to your mom, and make sure she can open it, or something like that.
Absolutely. If the biggest thing about you is that you invented the next resume formatting text file, that's great. Put that as the first line on your resume, but save it as a PDF.
Exactly. Yeah. So other things is your resume is your first point of contact with Google, and it's basically a quick hi, how are you, elevator handshake sort of deal, elevator pitch, handshake, whatever. And to that end, you really want this to be an incredibly easily digestible piece of information, right? So you want a clear format. You want quick bullet points that are easy to read. You want action words like I did this, I created that, whatever.
Right, because you want to highlight yourself.
Right.
What you're really trying to do is sell yourself to Google. So it needs to be, what did you do? So focus on that.
Right. And I think we actually skipped over this a little earlier, but nothing we say here is set in stone, rock solid. These are just some guidelines. These are some things that Google thinks about resumes. We see a lot of resumes So these are some general guidelines and tips, but that doesn't mean that everything we say is going to apply directly to you, because you might have a different story than Maria Chavez. Again, we'll meet her later. So like, if something doesn't really seem to make sense to you, or like you're like, oh, but I really like, this thing on my resume, I don't want to change it, or whatever, just do what makes sense for you. And like, we're here to kind of give tips and guidelines of general resumes that we've seen, right? Okay, so moving forward, another thing we want to see is results and impact are like very important to us. So when we're going through a resume, we kind of want to know quickly, like, what have you done, and like, how can we best understand that you've done it, right? That's kind of like the meat and bones of this. And then I think we also mentioned this earlier, but contact information, probably the most crucial part, because if you are excellent and we can't get in contact with you, that's the end of it. So put your email, put your cell phone number, put your address in case we want to mail you something. We're not going to do it, but we just might. And definitely put your LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, make a LinkedIn, put it there. Our recruitment department loves LinkedIns.
Huge thing too is beyond that, GitHub and any other open source projects you've worked on, those are huge too, because again, resume, that should be short and succinct and to the point. Right. But if you want to include additional resources of all the other amazing things you've done, definitely throw those
And
on.
we follow those links. Like, if we see a link, we are going to be like, okay, what's up with that person? We're actually going to go to the GitHub page. We're not just going to be like, they have a GitHub. Right. So, like, and that's actually kind of an awesome thing, because a resume is going to be like, short, quick, concise, gives us an idea of who you are. GitHub does not have to be that way. If you, like, want to have like an awesome GitHub page, you basically can like don't really have to brag about it as much in your resume, because we're going to go to that website. So it's going to be great.
Yeah. So let's move on. All right. So education specifically, I believe everyone watching today, you're all still in school. So that's where the bulk of your experience is going to have come from. Google realizes that. And for that reason, your education should be the first thing that you put onto your resume after, of course, your contact information and who you are. So as far as that's concerned, the things that you're going to want to include are all of the secondary education institutions that you attended.
Right. University or whatever it may be.
Which degrees you got. Obviously, that's
major.
Important, right? And then when you're planning to graduate, because that's when Google will be able to hire you if they want to.
Right. We kind of need to see that to just know that you're in the correct pool, because if you're graduating in 2 years and we think that you're applying for a full-time job, like, we're going to immediately want to know your graduation date. So put that up at the top.
After that, you're going to want to add a little bit of information about, how you did. So obviously your GPA is going to be the biggest indicator. So definitely put that on there. And then also,
so
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, so sometimes you have like a GPA and you're like, this is my GPA, but it's not really reflective of my abilities that relate to Google, right? Like, let's say you're a math major, you're like, okay, I got an okay grade in art history, but all my math grades are great. Put down your major specific GPA if you want to talk about that. That's totally fine, Like, include that stuff there so we can be like, okay, yeah, maybe they weren't the best at art history, but their computer science grades are really good, so, like, okay.
Right. So, again, the GPA is something that you should definitely include, but it's important to remember that your resume is all about highlighting your accomplishments and where you've succeeded. Right. So, make sure that if your GPA, isn't as great as maybe you hope it would be, you can go ahead and look for those other places for you to shine further in your resume.
Like, if you're working like 3 jobs and that's why like your resume is, your GPA, why are we swapping those words? Your GPA is like not the best because you were up late working. Like, put the fact that you were working 3 jobs like somewhere in your resume, and we'll be like, oh, this is a great GPA for someone who's working 3 jobs. Like, you get the idea. We're basically trying to understand who you are, and to that end, we want you to help us build a narrative of who you are with your resume. So, like, anything you can do to help us flesh out like your persona makes our lives way easier, and then we can be like, oh, this person seems googly, let's talk to them, right?
Yeah. All right. So after your education should come any experience that you have
Oh,
in the
wait. Can we go back to the other slide? We missed just, I think we missed the project, the project bullet point, which I'm sure you guys all want to hear about since this is how to include projects. So we also want to know what classes you've taken. That's pretty important to us. We kind of need to know that you've taken data structure and algorithms because those are kind of the bread and butter, right? Any advanced CS courses that you've taken or math courses or physics, whatever it may be, we kind of want to know about that. Brag to us. Let us know that you're awesome, right? We're going to want to know about course project work, cool things that you've done while you were doing quantum mechanics. I did nothing cool while I was doing quantum mechanics, but I'm sure you guys have like done awesome stuff. And then in terms of like technical skills, we need your programming languages. Like we really need to know that you can program in one of the Google languages, and those are Java, C++, C, Python, JavaScript. And then we've got a host of other languages here at Google, like Go. I mean, like we're not going to pretend that we don't use the language that we invented, but like the point is, when we talk to you and interview you, we gotta know that we're literally speaking the same language. So, and also, the order that you put that in, we're gonna assume that that's like the order that you're most proficient in. So, please don't put them alphabetically, or something silly like that, because we're gonna show up and try and talk to you in C, and you're gonna be like, oh, actually I'm best in Python. And we're gonna be like, okay, we gotta swap entries. Yeah. So.
All right, so moving on to experience. Hopefully you've listed everything about your education, all of the important details. Now you can go ahead and start talking about if you have internship experience or if you've worked on basically anything that has to do with the software engineering industry that would happen outside of the classroom.
Yeah, this is where you tell us about like the slide says, your experiences. Like we want to know, okay, you've been to school and what else have you done to interact with computer science, right? Like whose like jobs or internships, research, open source, like collaborative projects, student groups, hackathons, like cool class projects, those sort of things. And so we definitely want to know about them, but don't write us a paper about them because that's like the recruiter's gonna basically get bored and move on.
Right. You want to try to keep your resume to 1 or 2 pages.
Right.
So obviously there's a ton of information about you. It's all important. So you want to try to keep the descriptions as concise as possible and focus on the things that you did specifically. So it should be, bullet point. Here's what I did. Here's where I interned. And then a couple of maybe additional bullet points that are just the actions that you did there. So I solved 20 bugs, I created this different platform.
Those was action words.
Right. And then you're moving on to your next experience.
Yeah. So some, just like a little, the word I'm looking for? A little story about like what's happening. The recruiter is trying to like pick your resume out of a stack of resumes, right? You're a great candidate, and you want to make it as easy for them to like figure that out as possible. And they want to do this quickly because they got to get through all of them. So like, this is why you don't want to go on and on about that stuff. But then again, bring it back, GitHub links or whatever, like links that you put there, then you can expound on that. Like for every GitHub project that you have, you can put a README file on that and then have like a TLDR on every single project. And then they'll just scan through those and be like, oh, no. But that doesn't have to be on your resume, which is awesome. So like you kind of want to, make it easy on them because their job is really hard.
All right. So finally, we're moving on to extracurriculars and additional information. So if we've now talked about education and work experience. If like many people, maybe you didn't go to the most prestigious university, or maybe you don't have a ton of internship experience.
Okay.
That's fine. Google is still interested. We just want to know that you've done a ton of work outside of the classroom in maybe personal projects to show that you're interested in computer science, you're interested in software engineering, and you're passionate about doing the work. So, these can include a lot of different things. Student groups are great. If you have, a program at school where you guys go to a ton of hackathons, that's awesome. We want to know about that. open source projects, university honors. A lot of different schools have, special awards for, if you were the very best CS person in your entire department, that's huge. Definitely include that on there.
Right.
If you've written papers, gotten things published about
Right.
your personal opinions in the industry, that's huge too. And basically, it's just any impressive achievements that you feel that you've accomplished that you want to highlight that say, hey, I'm great, I should work
Right.
for Google.
Putting this, like, again, back into the same context I keep talking about, like, brag about yourself into a narrative, build us a narrative. If you have a great scholarship, include that so we can, because that's part of who you are, like, you're very impressive. These people thought you were very impressive. They have given you a scholarship. We would like to know about that. So just brag to us through this very clear, concise, perfectly formatted resume. I mean, it's not that hard. No, we're gonna get there. Don't worry about it. So, right, to recap what we have said, education is the first thing we generally want to see because it's usually your most recent activity. And to that end, we're going to want to know your degree, classes you've taken, expected graduation date, relevant coursework, and like technical skills that you've gained while at university, listed in order of proficiency, right? We're also going to want to know extracurriculars, student groups, especially leadership positions. We'd love to know that you're a leader or something and you can manage because if you can't lead, then we're all just going to fall off a cliff when we.
The most important takeaway is that you need to remember that the person that's reading your resume doesn't know you.
Yeah.
They're meeting you for the first time through your resume. So the goal always needs to be, how can I, as quickly, cleanly, and concisely show to this person that I would be a great fit for Google?
Right. And again, bullet points, great way to format things. Like, just gotta love your bullet points.
All right, so let's take a look at a little model resume that we've thrown together.
Here comes Maria Chavez.
Yes, Oren has spoken a lot about Maria Chavez. Let's get to know her a little bit more.
I think she's so cool.
So as you can see, her name is right at the top. That's who she is. She then includes a ton of ways to contact her, pretty much all of them. That's a great idea.
I can't wait to send her a postcard with her snail mail address.
Right. She includes her LinkedIn and her GitHub, so that's a great sign for whoever's reading the resume to say, wow, I can go and I can learn even more about this person if I love what I see on this page.
Right. And again, another quick plug for LinkedIn, because I have a ton of friends who hate LinkedIn and they're like, oh, I don't have a LinkedIn account. And it's like, no, have a LinkedIn account. That's how people contact you in this day and age. Like, if you do nothing but put your resume on there, that's fine. That's enough. Just make a LinkedIn account.
Yeah, fun tip. That was actually how I was approached to apply to work at Google. So definitely get your LinkedIn all set up because people are looking at that, and it's just a great way to talk about who you are.
So then we also see her GPA, right? And that she was on the dean's list. Look at her brag. We'd love to see that brag. We see related coursework. We know that she's taken data structures. We don't see algorithms on there, which is kind of sad, but I'm sure she's taken it. Look at her GPA. It's great. And then we see skills, programming languages, and again, C# must be her, primary language because that's the first one.
And she's got her programming languages right at the top of her skills because that's what's most relevant to the position, right? So immediately we see, okay, she's prioritizing her programming languages. Seems like she'd be probably a good fit for a software engineer role. Right. I think she's in the right place.
And then, in fact, we also see graphic design and foreign languages, which are not immediately obviously relevant to Google work, but that helps us understand who she is. It's impressive, and we get an idea of this narrative of who she is. She's someone who's trilingual and is into graphic design. That helps us sort of place her in her head, gives us an idea that she's a very Googly person. She's somebody we want to talk to.
All right. So after education, we move right to work experience. Okay. We see that she has some internship experience, which is great.
Most recent one first.
Yep, and she keeps it clean and concise, straight to the bullet points. You see those wonderful action words underlined in green. That's huge. The truth is that, when you're listing your experience, it's all about what did I do? And the fastest way to get to the point with that is to just jump right in with those action words. Right. And she also includes, if you see, those specific metrics. So, she includes that she taught programming, but she lists exactly what she taught. So she taught Java, Python, Scratch. That's great. She says that she created a curriculum, and she says how many people were there, 8 to 10 mentors. That's huge.
So open secret is that Google loves numbers. Like, they just love numbers. If you can incorporate numbers in basically any capacity into your resume, Google's going to be like, oh, man.
We're engineers. It's what we understand.
I know the number 12. I love this person, right? So, like, you talk about how you've, like, the percentage that you've increased something, or, like, the number of people in whatever program. Like, just if you throw some numbers in there, like, people are going to get really excited about that. So that's like a cool indicator to throw in there, and it's going to spice up your resume. Because if you say, like, well, at my internship, I solved a lot of bugs, we're going to be like, wow, that person's, cool. They solved a lot of bugs, but what's a lot of bugs? Like 2 big bugs, like 50 small bugs? You're like, I solved 50 bugs. It's like, wow. 50. That's a number. I like numbers. Do you like numbers, Alex?
I love numbers.
Oh, Alex loves numbers. Let's talk to this person. Right? So anyway, that's going to happen, that exact exchange. So you should throw numbers in there.
Okay. So now we're moving on to projects. This is where you list all of those other things that you did beyond beyond work and beyond school.
Right.
So as you can see, she includes a virtual machine that she helped to create. Distributed cryptography system. That's incredible. I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah, right.
Basically, this is where you go into those other things, and she has one bullet point that explains exactly what it was, and that's key. Keeping it succinct, it's clear. I can learn a little bit about it, and then my interest is also piqued. Now I want to talk to this person. I want to learn more about their experiences.
And this is right here in the title of our slide deck, like, how to incorporate your projects, or whatever the name of our slide deck is. It's like, projects are a really good way for us to understand who you are and, like, how you are interested in computer science. Having an internship, awesome, because then we know that you know how to work in a corporate environment or whatever. You, like, work with people, you know how to team. That's great. We love to see that. Projects, we also love to see. It's like, individual contributions, self-motivation. What are your interests? Like, Alex was telling me just the other day that he was, like, playing around and building a game engine, was it? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, like, that's, like, now if I see that on his resume, I'm like, oh, this person likes game design. Like, that helps me understand who he is. Right. Maria Chavez likes virtual machines. So, like, there's probably somebody at Google who's working on a virtual machine project, and they're going to get really excited about this person because they're like, oh man, this person is independently, like, doing a virtual machine project. I really like that. I want this person for my team.
I think a big key there too is that, maybe you haven't had all of the same opportunities. Google realizes that. Yeah. What we want to know is that you're passionate about the subject, and that you're working hard and independently towards it. So, if you don't have a ton of experience in one area, but you are able to show that, you're doing a ton of work still, that's great. Definitely include that. We want to see that.
The moral of the story is, we want to know that you're passionate about computer science, because we're all passionate about computer science, and we like to associate with other people who are passionate about computer science. And, like, projects is a top-notch way to show that.
Right.
So then, moving on to awards and experiences, that's kind of like everything else that you couldn't fit into the other categories. Awards, like, if you haven't mentioned these before, we want to see your awards. Like, again, she lists a scholarship there. So we were talking about scholarships earlier. Those don't have to go with education. Those can go, like, right down here at the bottom, where it's like, wow, the Rebel Alliance gave her a scholarship because they love her. And she was the first place in Pretend Hacks 2015, which is highly prestigious in the pretend world, let me tell you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, too, that I think we should tie back in, None of this stuff is steadfast rules.
Yeah.
So if it sounds like, well, they said that we could include this in education, but then we could also include it in projects, that's something that you need to decide on your own. The biggest thing about a resume is that it's clear, concise, to the point, so maybe, where exactly something goes isn't the most important, as long as it's visible, it's easy to tease out, and, whoever's reading it can pick it up right away.
And, like, if you look at this section, it's basically other ways for us to understand who she is and how she's interested in like computer science, or really just how she's Googly, right? She's like under awards, we're seeing Grace Hopper scholarship. So we all know that Grace Hopper is like a big name in computer science, right? So we're like immediately, whoa, that's cool. I mean, we all, but the Rebel Girls Who Code organization, that's awesome. Women in computer science, we love to see that. Gamer Club, cool. Hip hop dance, I already mentioned that I love to dance. This is why Maria and I are like, you know, best buds. But it's like, that's googly. Like, we kind of think it's fun that Maria really likes hip hop because I also really like hip hop, and like other people really like hip hop, or just we like people who like things. That's kind of how it goes. Same for community service. Like, I don't think in her time at Google she's ever going to program anything that has to do with volunteer blanket making. But that's not going to stop us from like being like, oh, that's really cool. And maybe when she gets here, she leverages like Googlers to make more blankets. Like, and that's something we're excited about. Like, we want people who are going to do cool things inside and out of computer science.
Yeah. All right, so let's take a look at the whole resume together. As you can see, you know, it's roughly one page. She's got her education right at the top. That's huge.
Yep.
She then goes on to list her work experience, projects, awards. And what you see is, so, you know, she's got her work experience first. That's sort of like, or sorry, she has her education first. But once she gets into her work
she has her
experience,
contact info first, which again,
yeah, huge. But you know, the biggest thing is that you want to have your sort of most significant accomplishments towards the top, and those are maybe the things that you expand on a little bit more. So as you can see, you know, she obviously values her work experience highly, so she's included a few bullets for each of those. And then we move on to projects. She's got, you know, multiple projects, but with the one bullet for each,
right.
Giving us a clear idea, but, you know, keeping it concise, which is very important. And then finally with her awards and experiences, it's more just of a list format to make sure that she gets everything in there.
Right. And I think that just looking at the whole thing together, the parts, like the best part about this is how easy it is to parse. It's like education, skills, work experience, projects, awards, and experiences. Like, you know, anything I could possibly search for is going to fit into one of those categories pretty easily, and I'm going to know exactly what it is. Scholarships might be in education, might be in awards and experiences, but like the point is that I can scan these lines really quickly, really easily, get a sense of who this person is, make a decision, and then move forward, right? And if this was just a block of text, that's just difficult. Like, this is not like reading a textbook, which some resumes kind of look like a textbook. It's just like, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then this, and this. There's no way to find anything in that. Look at all these bullet points. We love bullet points. Yeah? And there are numbers in there. We love numbers. But, like, most of all, we can just, like, quickly read it. So that's why Maria Chavez is getting a call from Google. Cool. So now it's time for questions. And again, if you missed the link before, it's at the bottom of this slide, and we're going to hang out on this slide for a while. So just copy that, do it now, do it later, but copy it into another tab, whatever you want to do. So,
all right.
Yeah.
So let's see.
We have some questions.
Yeah. All right. Our first question is from Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Michelle says, I'm worried about cluttering my resume by including all of my projects. How do I handle that?
Do you want to take this or start?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a great point. You know, if you have hundreds of projects, it's just not all going to fit on, you know, a small space to be able to keep concise. I think, so number one, always remember that if you have a ton of projects and they all have links on GitHub, throw your GitHub on there. Say, hey, you know, I have 100 more projects that you can look at on my GitHub, and throw that link right at the top. Right. That's a great way for whoever's reading to learn about all those projects. But as far as the resume is concerned, really, you know, you want to try to prioritize which projects you feel were the most significant, that really showcase your ability the best, and throw those on there.
And I think this is a rule of thumb, but like just in general with resumes, it's quality, not quantity. Not saying that like quantity isn't awesome, but I'm saying that like you're going to want to harp on like your most quality projects. I'm sure like all your projects are like of roughly equivalent quality, but whatever you feel most like proud of, put that at the top, leave the others for the GitHub link. And again, we're going to follow that. So like don't worry about it. Make your README files have like TLDR at the top, and that'll make our recruiters' lives like way easier. But like on the resume, keep it to what you feel really proud of. So I'll take this next one from Crazy Robot Girl 51. Love the handle. What types of projects should I get involved in? And that is a great question. You have to be involved in this exact one type of project, or we don't even want to talk to you at all. No. Okay, so like the answer is just whatever you're interested in, right? Because we just want to know what you're interested in, and whatever projects you do should basically reflect that, right? You know, if you do a crazy project in assembly language and you never want to touch assembly again, like you can put that down, but like it's I guess that's impressive, but it's also somewhat misleading because then we're probably going to assume that you like assembly. So what you should do is if you're looking for projects, looking to get started, just start on whatever seems interesting.
Yeah.
Like try your, like look around, try different things, and whatever catches your attention and seems like fun to do, that's what you should do. And like that'll probably go the furthest because you're interested in it and you like it. And that's like how you get involved in CS.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think start with something that you're passionate about and then say, is there an app that I could build for this? Right. Is there an open source community that's working on something similar to this? Right. Really go from there. It has to start with what your interests are, what you want to do, and it really builds from there.
And just start playing around with things. Like anything that seems interesting, because that's how you get started. Like you don't have to immediately jump into a group, like an open source project. It's great if you do that or eventually get there. That's awesome. Like I have a friend who is like a big part of Open Maps. She loves like working with map data. She loves it. And like it's a hobby and a passion of hers, and she's like has fun with it. So she would put that down. But like I don't think she just jumped into the maps. She like started playing around with map data and was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Look at all this stuff I can do with it. Right.
So it wasn't, I'm going to do this because it will look good on my resume. It was, I love maps. I love exploring that field. How can I get more involved?
Right. So just follow your interests. It'll be fine.
All right. So our next question is from Jen. And Jen says, is project work more valuable than an internship on my resume? So, obviously a software engineering internship is a huge sign if, a recruiter is reading your resume that you have experience in the industry, you're clearly interested in the industry, and you know a little bit about sort of what it's like.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a false premise in this question that, like, oh, one of these has to be valued like more than the others. We're trying to get a sense of who you are. Like back to this whole narrative thing, whatever most strongly resonates with your story is most valuable, right? So if you have a dinky internship and like a really cool project, that really cool project is way more important than the other internship, right? And if you have a really cool project and a really cool internship, those are both really cool. We want to hear about both of those. Make space on your resume to talk about both of them because you value them equally important. Now, Google thinks that it's important to know that you can work in a corporate environment because Google is a corporation and they want to know you can work with teams, you know how to develop with others and have priorities and stuff like that. So it's definitely important to them to see that you can work in an internship, but if you don't have an internship, that's not oh man, it's the end of the world. It's just, okay, that's not part of my story. I still have a story.
Right. If you're passionate about the work and you really, you feel that you would be a great fit for Google, but you haven't had the opportunity to have internship experience, go ahead and throw those projects on there. Google is going to see if you have a ton of projects that you worked on. Right. Okay, this person maybe doesn't have industry experience yet, but clearly they're qualified. Clearly they care about the role.
Right.
I think we're going to give them a shot.
Right. And it also flips the other way, where it's if you have some really cool internships and not a lot of projects because you were doing all these internships, that's also your story. Just tell us who you are. So we've got from Idea Spare. How do you measure the quality on a project? I have worked in projects for a company and I can't show my work at a website or on GitHub. How can I present my work in my resume? That is a very real question. As someone who works on confidential stuff all the time, and like you have to draw that line between what can you talk about, what can't you talk about.
Yeah, I would say so. As long as it's not confidential, if you can include any measurables like work for this company, helped to build a tool that reached 20 million people,
Right.
That's great. Anytime that you can throw numbers in, that's huge. Even if we can't see the actual work that you did, anything that ties back to the success is huge.
And I think Alex has just really cut right to that point. Impact is the way to go there. The more, it's fine if you can't talk about the project, but if you can talk about the impact, that's pretty much just as good. You're like, I did a project and this was the impact at my company. It made these people's lives easier. It had by this percentage or whatever, again, the numbers. So you really just want to, I understand the struggle and do the best you can to work around it. It's cool if you can include whatever technical details that you can, but it's certainly not the end of the world just because you can't talk about it because it's proprietary or something.
Okay, so our next question is from Alec Dand, and let's see, they say, while applying for jobs, I put in work experience, but in terms of projects, I get confused as to whether I should be adding them as work experience or should leave them in the resume under projects, especially when the projects are highly related to the job profile I am applying. Okay, so great question. I think this goes back to the fact that there are no steadfast rules. The biggest thing with your resume is that the information that you want to get across is clear and readily readable. So whether or not that falls under projects or work experience, that's sort of up to your own intuition to decide. There's no correct answer. Just make sure that you've got your bullet point. It's clear. You're showing exactly the work that you did on the project, and which heading it falls under is not the most important thing.
All right, so from Jordan Schneider, we've got, is it okay if I don't have a personal projects / open source stuff if I have a lot of part-time during the year jobs? And I think we've already answered this one a little bit, but yeah, totally fine. Whatever is relevant to you and your story, that's what we want to see. So if you have job experience and that's what you were doing instead of doing personal projects, just tell us about that, and that's part of your story, and we're gonna understand that and move forward with who you are, not who somebody else is.
Right.
That would be crazy.
Yeah. Also, I think a good note is, so the headings that we went over, work experience, projects, those are not the finite list. If you feel you worked a ton in maybe other areas that you feel somehow tie back into software engineering, go ahead and try to include something other work experience, where you can say, here are the other things I did, and here's how it made me a great leader, or something like that.
Cool. So, Lakshay Verma, how do you show interest in resumes about things that we don't have any experience in? And that's a tough question. You can show interest in things with measurables and with impact, but if you're interested in something, but you're interested in it without a grounding, then I don't really think that Google is going to take that seriously, to be just totally frank.
The best thing to do, if you're really interested in something, go out and get involved in some way with that activity, So
Right.
Anything that you really love, go do it now. And
Right.
then you will have
Just explore.
that bullet point on your resume.
Right. Or, just get into Google, and then on the preference form, when they ask you what you want to do, just put all those things you're interested in, and they'll throw you on a team that does that stuff. So, one of those two ways.
Yeah. All right. So our next question is from Taka, who asks, would my resume benefit from having non-CS activities, such as long hikes or camping? I know some companies like well-rounded employees. That is a good question. Google is definitely interested in who you are as a person, and they love to hear those things. But it's important to remember that that's not the priority. If we're looking for a software engineer, the most important thing is not that you love long hikes and camping.
Right.
Include that, but maybe keep it as sort of an end note to your resume. If you have a little bit of extra space, throw that on there as, personal interest.
Basically, like, we love to see it, but if that's the difference between a 1-page and a 2-page resume, just cut it, basically, But we do like to see it if you can get it on there, because we're interested in people.
Right. Also, if you have your LinkedIn built up, maybe you include that in a little blurb about me at the end. Also, I love hiking and outdoor camping.
Just anything that you want to put in but can't fit in the resume, put in a link somewhere and throw that link on the resume, and we have to follow it. So, all right. So I think that's all the questions we have time for. Thanks so much for joining us. This has been great for us. You guys are a really talkative audience. Appreciate that.
I love the interaction.
Yeah. All right. So sign up for those links, and I hope this was helpful. All right. See you guys.
See ya.
Goodbye, farewell, avidas and adieu. To you, and you, and you, and you, and you.